My friend asked me to paint up an army for him for a competition he's going to this month. So I thought, hey, I'll show everyone here to record it. I'll show everybody how I go through the workflow, how I paint efficiently, and how you can also tackle a big army like this in this video. This isn't a speed painting challenge. I'm kind of working on this army throughout my work days when I'm doing other orders and stuff like that. I'm kind of doing this here and there, and I've been working on it for about 3 weeks. But I wanted to show and kind of record on how I would work through an army if I wanted to paint straight. So if I wanted to work on it every single painting session, just continue to work on this army. It's still the same basic principles. You still walk through the same workflow. It just depends on when you're getting around to do it. So here's what I have to get done. I have 80 Infernal Cohort, basically the infantry, 12 Bull Centaurs, big models, 3 Dominator Engines, not that bad, 4 battery cannons, and a whole mess of heroes. Now to tackle all these models to paint, I need to get a plan together or I'm going to go insane. Planning out your army can really help in a lot of ways, but mainly you don't have to make a million different corrections throughout the process. You can get your plan set and you're good to go. So when I'm talking to customers or friends or myself, I always want to think of my concept first. For this army, my friend really likes the thought of like the Dark Iron Doors from WoW, mixed in with the Fel energy. He really likes that coloring of the green Fel, not necessarily a green fire, but technically a Fel energy. So that's what we kind of wanted to go for. Now looking at our army list, in general, I wanted to start out with the infantry, so all the spear guys I have to do. I think that'd be the easiest part to start. And when I'm looking at all these spear guys lined up on my table, it really reminds me of the dwarves from the Hobbit movies for some reason, but it's you know, it'll be the same about the way. Anyway, looking at our standard dwarf here, I want to cover the whole model in a dark metallic color. So I'm going to mix in some black primer with dark steel to get this. And this will help me fill in any of these missing gaps that I really don't want to worry about because I got to paint a whole lot of models. It gives me coherency and it gives my whole model something to look at. The rest of the model is going to be pretty simple. I'm going to work through a dark Cornish Basilisk red, deep gray to light gray for the skin. I want bronze for all the trim. I'll probably just use a simple mid-tone red leather for the handles and the hilts, and then I just want to use his accent gems will be all in jade. It should work well, and jade should pop off the table. Now we have the Fel to deal with also. We'll save that for the for later. I would do all the OSL anyway at the very end because we want any sort of glow effects to go over any of the model we've already painted and finished. Before I get into any painting here, I just need to build up the bases on some of the bigger models. So what I'm just going to do here is break up some cork and glue it down to the base. I'm using a big round cork for the bull base, but everything else I'm just going to use chunks. Half of the bulls I'm going to put glue straight to the base with just a simple texture paste, and the other half I'm going to make them up on rocks because I want to do like a Fel, almost lit river lava kind of thing at the end. So once I rip up my chunks, pretty simply, I just want to make sure I rip off the corners so it's not a flat edge and cover it in some sand. That just gives me a nice rounded texture to the edge. And simply, because I don't really know at this point what I want to do with that quote-unquote lava Fel liquid, I'm just going to use some water gel from Vallejo and I'm just going to put it on the base around any of the rocks. This, you know, it's not the best effect for right now. We'll work on it later, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do yet and I had to get something done on the base just for my own sanity. Now we have to be efficient here for my own sanity, and this is kind of the way I work through all of my models anyway. And one of the best first steps you can take is mixing your primer with your first base coat. This saves you a step on priming, but it also can dull down or darken the color you're going to use as a good shadow color as well. So for our first step, I'm just going to use some Duraluminum from Vallejo, great metallic color. I'm going to mix it with some Vallejo Surface Black Primer. I'm going to get it to a dark metal color, and I'm just going to base coat pretty much every single model in the army besides a few, and those would be the Dominator engines and the Big Bull, because those are going to be a different process. Once I had everything base coated in this dark metal color, all I did was take my big dry brush and just dry brush the hell out of every single model and every edge, and just basically work my way around each model with a steel color, like around a lead belcher. And this is a great turn your brain off just work, because again, all this metal just needs to be hit a little bit. We're gonna keep it dark. We don't have to go crazy here with the highlights. Before I move on to any other colors, I just need to set the colors of these bull legs. So I just use a dark brown for the airbrush to cover them up, and then I can really work on the rest of the colors. So at the same time, I'm doing all these models in batches. So starting with my bassless red, hitting all the fabrics, then I move on to my grays for the skins, bronze, browns. I will say save the trim for the last, because there are some parts that you're going to want to hit with the lower color first, and then the trim should be done last. It just makes it easy, because like the hilts and some of the scabbards, you need to paint those first before you paint them bronze. We're going to leave all the weapon edges to the end. I have a idea that I think might work for them, so we'll deal with that later. When you're at this step, pretty much all of your infantry and bulls are base coat. So now I'm just going to move on to the big Dominator engines. These are a little different. I'm going to base coat these with a mix of black surface primer and dark brown, because we're going to just build this up with a dry brush. So once everything's dry, I'm going to take my big dry brush and just go straight with Pro Acryl Bronze, and I'm going to dry brush this all over the model, covering all the steps. Once that base coat of bronze is on, I'm just going to use Rune Brass from Citadel, and I'm going to do a little highlight, kind of stippling around all the edges. Again, it's very subtle, but we want this to be like a dark, beaten bronze. Now for basically, I'm at this point of all base coatings. I'm going to move on to my wash step. So I get a nice, pretty dark coat of black brown oil wash. And I'm just going to cover all the models. It's really going to help define and bring down some of those tones, because again, these are supposed to be dark, like dark iron dwarves. They're supposed to be mostly dark color, dark hues. And this wash is really going to help define, especially this kind of wash looks amazing in any of that bronze work, because it really just highlights each spot and it really pulls your definition, and it looks great. After my wash step, keeping it very simple here, just going to cover everything in a matte varnish from a spray can, just to lock in any of that oil, because I do want to keep them kind of dark. I don't need to pull any of that oil off, because it was, I like the effect it gave me. And I'm just going to work my way around each color's highlight. So back to like a lighter steel for all the metals. I'm going to bring in some Mephiston red for the cloaks. Bronze is just going to get retouched with an edge. But again, this is all simple batch painting. We're just working our way through. Some things I focus on is I spend a little more time here working on the jade parts and the gems, because I think like those can pop a little bit with a little bit extra work. I do it very simple here. I'm basically just working on a two-step highlight of just jade, and then jade mixed up to a blue-green color, and I just basically slowly between two steps build a gradient up in the jades. And I think it adds a nice pop, because the rest of the dark on the table, these models are pretty dark, so I wanted the red to pop and the jade to pop. Of course, the bronze looks fantastic over the entire army. That was the point why I want to use bronze for the trim. By this point in my painting, I actually am running out of time here, so I got to bang out this OSL and the rest of these guys pretty quickly, like within a painting session. So I'm going to do very quick basing on these with basically just neutral gray and a light gray dry brushing. I don't have a ton of time to spend, which is unfortunate, but I got to get this done. And a lot of these bases are going to be fine because there's going to be OSL on them, so I think that should pull your eye away from any of the lack of details, if you will. So before I start my OSL work through the airbrush, I did want to do all the runes. So there's tons of runes that are carved into a lot of the artillery and the bulls and the Dominator engines. So all I did was I used a watered down oil, a thinned down oil with mineral spirits, and I basically just ran this into all of the runes, and anything that had a rune, I basically wanted to have a glow effect on it. Once all these spots were done, I came in with my airbrush and I basically set the white glow for the rest of the OSL. So this has to do with the bases, any effect that was going to get a fire effect on it, and also I would do a very light glow around the runes. I didn't want to lose the definition of what I already did though, so be careful when you're doing this step. You don't want to blow them out. And then very simple with the glow effect here. We're basically just going to use a mix of fluorescent green and lime green to cover all of the parts here. It will take probably 2 to 3 passes and coats to cover everything to the color we need it to. We want it to be very vivid. We want it to almost be like it hurts the eyes a little bit how bright it is, because we're going to tone it down after this. After my coats are set, I'm going to work with a dry brush here, and I'm just going to work on darkening. So I want this light green flame effect to go into a darkened smoke. So I'm going to start with a dark gray into a black, and I'm just going to kind of work my dry brush around the flames and the smoke and give it all some definition and some contrast. For some of the hero models, I wanted to do a little bit extra, so I went actually back the other way in the spectrum, and I used more fluorescent green from Vallejo mixed with actually some whites, and I just wanted to really get some contrast on the higher end. So I did some contrast points, especially with the arcing lightning here. And I also wanted to paint this into, you know, the birth or the start of the flames. I wanted a hot center of the flames. that's pretty much it for these. You know, it kind of blasted through the first part of it. I spent a little more time in the OSL because I knew that the models that were getting the OSL were more the centerpiece models, so I knew those would be eye drawing, and I knew that the spears and shield guys would be a nice cohesive. You could put them in 2 lines, like we see here. This is from the tournament. It looks pretty cool, especially from the other way. You're looking at it, you got your spear lines. It looks like a real army, which I know that we are kind of, people in the community might be complaining that armies don't really look like armies anymore, but I don't know, this one looks like an army, so I think it's pretty cool, and it came out good. I'd probably say this took me about, when I really started working, it took me like 6 or 7 sessions, which are like 4-hour chunks for me usually, so it did take some time, but again, it wasn't the most, like, I didn't work straight through. If I worked straight through, this would probably take me a little less than a week. It really wasn't that complicated. I kept the paint scheme simple for that reason. I think it came out great, you know, and I think having a workflow and kind of working, pre-planning, working in batches, and just having everything done at the same time. A big part, if you're gonna wash, you make sure that everything's done before you wash. That's a big one, because wash usually takes a few hours to dry. So that's big for me. I want to make sure everything's up to the same stage, so that when I'm done with my wash, I can really get into my highlights and I can just blow through them and do all the complex work. Anyway, I have a few other armies that I'm going to be doing here coming up soon. I hope they relate well to you, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.